Hi, I'm Ian Mean. Welcome to the second in the series of the University of the West of England Distinguished Address Lectures. Tonight we're hearing from Rick Haythornthwaite. Rick is chairman of Centrica, also been chairman of some of the leading companies in Britain. He's going to be talking about disruption in the digital age. Rick, we're in the middle of a digital revolution. You've got some strong ideas about that, haven't you? That it can actually be disruptive.
Well, I think the nature of the digital revolution is the impact of the digital revolution is far greater than leaders allow themselves to believe. And it's very tempting to think about this digital revolution like all the other revolutions that have gone before. We've been having revolutions for the last millennium, each one about a third shorter than the one before. And it's disruptive for a couple of reasons. The first is it's moving ever faster, and actually that allows us, I think, to tackle one of the big issues of our time, which is productivity. It's a big opportunity there. But at the same time, it's actually changing society, our relationship to each other, our relationship to power, our relationship to ideas, in a greater way than we've seen since the 15th century. And that actually is posing questions for leaders that are at one time exciting, but also quite disorienting. And I think that makes it a threat unless leaders embrace it and actually find new ways of leading in this different world.
So how do leaders do that? How do they embrace the digital revolution and not allow it to take them over?
Well, I think the first thing is understanding the nature of the opportunity and the threat. So the nature of the opportunity is very clear. I mean, we in the UK have a big productivity gap. It's well documented. It's kind of 25 to 35% gap between us and comparable nations, Germany, France, etc. It's 17% gap between what it would have been if we continued the way we were before 2007 financial crash and where we are now. So big gaps. And people look at this and say, this is really weird. We've got this digital revolution going on and yet productivity is lagging. Well, the good news is actually it's always lagged in history. That the appearance of a general purpose technology like computing then needs actually a shift in systems and processes that complement and enable it. So we saw a first phase of enterprise-wide technologies that used computing power that knew how to follow rules, and we got more productive. Now we're waiting for a series of technologies to come through that actually know how to learn, how to pattern recognize. And I believe in the next 2 or 3 years that we are going to see a very significant leap as we see the convergence of machine learning, mobile technologies, cloud technologies, big data. I think in those areas where we're very weak in the UK, which manufacturing, wholesaling, retailing, transport, we're going to see a profound change. So the first thing is leaders need to relax and just make sure they can do everything in their power to bring those technologies through and deploy them. The threat part of it is quite interesting. And just think back to the 15th century. Gutenberg invents the printing press. Suddenly, the world has changed, society has thrown its head. Everything before then, leadership was this weird mix of kind of faith, tradition, authority. The only public discourse was really people arguing which faith mattered and who had the God-given right to rule. And then suddenly, society had all this information, all this data, and society suddenly said, hey, well, wait a minute. I want democracy, I want racial and sexual rights and equal rights, I want freedom of press and thought and expression. I want religion out of legislation and education. I want separation of church and state. And all of it was actually quite chaotic first. It was uncurated. It was just pouring around. It was generating ideas. And leaders were struggling to work out how to make sense of it. Sound familiar? Now, that's what's happening today in my view. What Gutenberg did for society, Zuckerberg and Berners-Lee have done for individuals. They've democratized participation. They put enormous power in the hands of individuals. Information is this bizarre new commodity. It has zero marginal cost. It never wears out. And so we're trying to learn to live in this new world. And it is, a lot of leaders see this as a threat because from a trust standpoint, a trust is the fabric of business. It is no coincidence we're going through a really bad period of trust in business. Because however well-intentioned a leadership, the slightest stumble on this high wire performance, and you fall very hard.
Like VW.
Like VW. Well, I think we need to differentiate between egregious acts, and well-intentioned companies. Egregious acts of mismanagement anywhere have no place. But there are a lot of people who are working very hard to deliver good service, but it's not enough in today's society. So that's a threat until you actually embrace the new technologies and start to engage with society. Strategies are no longer simply an extension of the past. Things are moving too fast and in too entropic random a fashion. So to embrace strategy these days, you've got to be able to step forward in time. What might the futures look like? Therefore, what do you have to do to prepare skills, capabilities today? Delivering results really is about making in-flight changes to organizations where you've got legacy business and new businesses. And it's always about keeping perspective on who you are as a leader. So it is a different world for leaders today. And leaders who come to terms with that actually have a very, very exciting set of tools at their disposal. Those that don't and fight are in for a hell of a bad time. And it's actually all about, I think, recognizing that we are in an extraordinary period of history. And that, for those that want to make use of it, just recognize it and ride it.
You've done pretty well, haven't you? You've rode it. Looking at your CV, you're now chairman of Centrica. You've had some big jobs in the past. How have you ridden it?
Well, I think, first of all, is making leadership a constant inquiry is one thing, and recognizing one's got to change over time. I think I was probably lucky in my style of leadership, which is one that seeks to help people navigate, facilitate, curate, and has gradually come into vogue. The charismatic, omnipotent, omniscient leader has died over that period where I've been moving my career, which has been helpful. It's sort of the game has moved to me. But I think always it's a matter of you've got to be lucky enough to have the openings, and then if something opens up, walking through and making the most of it. So I think in any career like mine, a little bit of luck has helped.
Now, talking about energy particularly, you've had a lot of experience in that area. How do you see energy? Is this really one of the great issues of our time at the moment?
Well, I can tell you as chairman of Centrica, it feels like it, and it's clearly rarely out of the news, and rightly so. I mean, people's energy bills make up a lot of their disposable spend, and the public are sitting in a world where they really worry about what is going to cost them this winter. Whereas as a nation, as a company, we're trying to balance that with trying to drive towards a low carbon society and making sure we have security of supply. And I don't think as an industry, as a series of as policymakers, that we have communicated this very well. So it's not surprising it's in the news a lot.
So how would you do it better? How can you do it better?
Well, I think first of all, coming back to the point of building trust with the public, recognizing the public has a voice and the public actually understands a lot more than sometimes we allow. I think we can be too patronizing, too paternalistic. So the first thing is actually make it clear that there are trade-offs. There are big trade-offs. In an ideal world, we would like to deliver affordability, low carbon, and security. Unfortunately, that's an irreconcilable equation. And so then I think engage the public in what the public can control. to hand more control to them. And that's why really the effort that we as Centrica are putting in, for example, into making sure that the consumption at homes can be brought down through smart metering, through connected homes, connected boilers. I think actually focusing on giving individuals the power to control their own destiny to the greatest possible
extent. Do the public understand that? Do they get that?
I think they're getting it gradually. If you have a smart meter and you can see on a day-by-day basis, on a minute-by-minute basis, what you're consuming, and you're given the information to say, well, actually, if I switch that kettle off, or I only put the dishwasher on once a day, I'm consuming less, or if I don't occupy that room, I'm consuming less, then it's an osmotic process. Then the public naturally get it. But the distribution isn't material enough now, and it worries me that people are concerned about smart metering and its viability as a scheme. It's in its infancy. What can really be wrong with giving people the information they need, connecting them digitally to their supply company, getting into a dialogue that is about driving down carbon consumption, driving down the use and therefore driving down the bills, making sure we get rid of these estimated bills once and for all, which is the biggest source of complaints.
Yeah.
And what can be wrong with that? I think as a nation, it'll help competition. This is a very competitive industry, contrary to public views. I mean, we have 30 companies supplying energy. It'll allow simpler bills, much better competition, much better choice in the hands of consumers. And the more choice they get, the more they engage. The more they engage, I think, the more we can get into dialogue about the broader issues.
Aren't they just worried about the bill, though, Rick? How much they're paying, what they paid last time?
Inevitably, that's the most important thing. But I think over time, the public are going to come to realise that climate change is about everyone. Right now, I think climate change is a peripheral issue. It's something that people talk about in Paris. The politicians talk about it. But is it really something that affects me on a day-to-day basis? It's going to at some stage. And somehow we've got to find a way of
How do you sell that?
It's very difficult.
How do you sell that to the householder in Bristol here?
Well, it's of course, the theoretical way of selling it is not a very comfortable way, and that just says that that carbon has a cost to us all, that we're all riding on the back of other people's carbon use, and therefore, politicians are talking about pricing carbon, and when that happens, it comes home to roost very quickly. But of course, as a nation, we always move so quickly on these things, leaving us a competitive disadvantage, and forcing issues that are international issues on our local residents. So we've got to all be very, very careful on that. And we're discussing and debating these issues as a company, and certainly with policymakers continuously. It is, in the end, an energy supply company there is there to serve a customer, and we've got to work out what our customer wants. You're absolutely right. Right now, they want lower bills. Over time, we've got to find a way to have them want lower bills, and a nation that is sustainable, a planet that is sustainable.
Yeah.
And we've got to work. We've got to crack that one.
Yeah. Now we're here at the University West of England. If I'm a graduate just coming out of this university, what's your advice to them? You had a long background in education yourself. What's your advice? What would your advice to be to a young graduate?
Well, first of all, I think it's good to prove to yourself and others that you could be excellent at something. Recognise that when you do what you're doing with a topic. You're demonstrating you can dig deep, be excellent, and you've developed a process of thinking, and that is important. But that is sort of the entry ticket. I think it's the characteristics around that employers look for. First of all, I think it's important that people are able to communicate, both in terms of literacy and and numeracy. I mean, both. I think no one can come around and say, look, I'm sorry, I'm all about words, or I'm all about numbers.
Yeah.
The second is, I think, a demonstration that you have initiative, you're self-started, that you've done stuff, that you're not a follower. And then I think the ingredient is just recognise that you can connect with people. You know, if I see someone that show me they can do something and do it well, that they can communicate with me, that they connect with people, that they have high initiative, they go straight to the top of my list.
One big tip for young graduates from you.
Yeah, I think if young graduates, just you'll never get a moment in your life where it feels like a candy store of experience as you have in university. Make the best of it. Don't waste a moment.
Great. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.